I'm Theron Q Ramacharaka. Welcome, or as the case may be, welcome back. Today, we take a look at a significant turning point in the course of human history, its implications for today, with hints of what these might have to do with personal involvement, individual and in mass, and their implications for today, with hints of what these implications might have to do with personal involvement in the face of perception, deception, even consciousness hijacking. A few notes to get started, though. You may notice that this is a casual setting here, which I like, and I hope you appreciate. We get to see eye to eye. My kitchen area is in the background. I hope this is acceptable to you. I feel that it is. It is for me. And this is not a slick professional production. Again, it's casual. But the content of this is very significant. Is very significant to us. And while you will note that it does contain factual information straight out of, written history, it also appears behind the scenes involving some information that is not so commonly known or commonly written about or spoken about. And it does involve some of my own views and ideas. But where so, I assert and I assure you, these points of view that of my own edition meet the highest academic standards. I know that they do. Let's get started. The Copernican revolution, behind the scenes. For many of us, the mention of scientific revolution immediately suggests two things. One, a paradigm shift, or the replacement of one worldview with another worldview. And two, the Copernican revolution as the most recognized example of such an event. In short, mathematician and astronomer Nicholas Copernicus, born February 19, 1473, to a German family, subject at that time to the Polish crown, proposed that rather than the Earth standing at the center of the universe, and around which all other heavenly bodies revolve, as the established worldview that the ancient astronomer Ptolemy had set forth, in actuality, the sun stands at the universal center, and everything else, including our own third sphere from the sun, revolves around it. That is, he proposed a heliocentric or sun-centered worldview to replace the going geocentric or earth-centered worldview. A paradigm shift, as we will see. These two worldviews involved far more than astronomy alone. They tied in with every aspect of human life. His heliocentric proposal flew in the face of the testimony of the senses. When we turn our eyes heavenward, it appeared to make no sense. It also smacked of heresy in the opinion of the church. A brow-raising consideration because in the church, Copernicus held position just under the rank of bishop. The church maintained that God created us in the highest accord and placed us and our terrestrial home at the center of creation. All affairs took place around us and for us. Humanity had high purpose, divine purpose. In the geocentric worldview, our heavenly position ran hand in hand with explanations of all things involving their purposes. For example, the rain fell to water crops. It ran downhill to form pools where we might bathe, and to give it a rest. Significance and meaningfulness infused all of life. Copernicus' astronomy threatened all of that. His proposed program gained no mass momentum during his lifetime. For us today, it was groundbreaking and fruitful, but for those back then, it was earth-shattering and needless. So why did he propose it in the first place? Historical, scholarly, and encyclopedic explanations for it exist in detail, all pretty much boiling down to Copernicus asserting that his astronomy involved simpler mathematics than did Ptolemy's mathematics. But let's cut to Copernicus' secret side. Behind the scenes, Copernicus not only dabbled in Hermetic magic, deemed by the church to have a demonic origin, but he also, moreover, belonged to a cult which fervently worshipped the sun and worshipped the sun god Ra. Ra held by them to be the true creator of mankind. These two related affairs, the magic and the worship, didn't just smack of heresy. They practically defined heresy and would have caused his execution had they come to the public eye. Even today, we find little said about these underlying religious convictions, which provided the core thrust for Copernicus' apparently scientific brainchild. His sun-centered, or heliocentric astronomy. An astronomy which, interestingly, set into motion a spiritually devastating legacy. Just as the geocentric worldview went hand in hand with human importance under God, and with explanations of all things involving their purposes, the newly proposed heliocentrism went hand in hand with the removal of the human being from God's center stage in two ways at once. One, astronomically, and two, also with respect to an individual's importance and purpose for living. While mathematical explanations of all things amount to nothing of the sort, all leaving a lasting void in the human soul. But history tells us that as the printing press and internationalism came into vogue, and as Kepler, Galileo, Newton, Descartes, Nietzsche, and others made their pursuant impacts on humanity, Copernicanism slowly made its way to popular acceptance and came to stand as perhaps the most notable scientific revolution known to the world. Excuse me. And the question, what is the purpose of anything at all, still echoes in the heart of humankind. Now the language of applied mathematics is the language of science and technology, and their advances frequently generate seemingly miraculous results. The boom of technology has escalated to nuclear proportions and beyond. The Copernican revolution stands central to a movement from the ancient era to the modern era. We have progressed into the postmodern era. We might well ask what the newly condensing worldview will be, as what is human-made, with leading-edge technology, now seems about to surpass humankind's inner qualities. Might we peer into hardware and software, hoping to find in them a sense of life's purpose, like that which died out nearly too many centuries ago for the species to remember that one ever existed? We could throw our hands up at this point on the grounds that what's done is done and what will be will be. Instead, let's frame the entire situation in related terms and make clearer sense of it. Let's pause for a moment between one worldview that perceives the universe as conscious substance in motion, with all its wondrous qualities, its wondrous and living qualities on the one hand, and on the other hand, a worldview that perceives the universe as meaningless quantities of on and off logic states and of electromagnetic fluctuations. The first worldview full of anticipation and purpose, and its counterpart empty of the kind. An apparent, deeply striking dilemma over two viable worldviews. Yet the two consist of two phases of the same thing, really. So what to think? Maybe the cosmic screen of consciousness upon which the drama of life is cast is just a poetic notion dreamed up by those who once upon a time looked up and saw the heavenly spheres revolving around this little terrestrial one. For all of us, standing here center stage, but really is not that way at all. Maybe there is only one brain, an artificial one, hooked up to wires through which mathematical information passes, making electrical pulses turn on and off this and that and the other brain cell, generating perceived experiences that have no actual existence, all according to the whims of some eternally mad demon that doesn't even have a damn to give about it. A real and present fear of the greatest tragedy and final horror has it that neither life nor death have any significance whatsoever. And similarly, that in the chasm created by the Copernican revolution, we have fallen prey to misdirected notions of a way out, or even to accepting a worldview that with religious-like fervor embraces artificial reality constructs of our design, steps toward our own consciousness oblivion, yet perceived as spiritual advance. A moment ago, we laid down and resolved an apparent dilemma. It serves as a realistic analogy for an actual false dilemma that's been at work for centuries, and which lies at the bottom of the Copernican revolution's paradigm clash. We'll expose its falsity and show how its aftermath can be set aright. Excuse me. We have seen why Copernicanism was not accepted at the time of Copernicus. A glaring dilemma got in the way, the one to which we now refer. But importantly, Copernicanism rather could have been accepted under the same relevant given circumstances. The dilemma has it that the Copernican revolution forced a decision between, on the one side, warm and fuzzy, purposeful explanations of the world, and on the other side, cold and prickly mathematical explanations of the world. It appeared that the two sides could not reconcile with one another, and there was no separate third option. That's the way a true dilemma works. But as said, this dilemma is false, and it has been from the start. How so? The two sides inherently entail their own reconciliation. Purposeful explanations are compatible with mathematical explanations. They are consistent with one another. Fundamentally, two phases of the same thing. Specifically, at the critical point where the two sides clashed is how all things are explained. And it so turns out that purposeful explanations and mathematical explanations explain each other. Purposeful explanations explain why mathematical explanations work. In turn, mathematical explanations explain how purposeful explanations work. This reconciliation, a stated synthesis of a sort, defines a metaphysical connection and fundamental relationship in a living world and in a meaningful existence. Interesting that this has got overlooked or brushed aside for centuries. Excuse me. Our stated synthesis grounds in an expanded understanding of things as they are and always have been. Functionally, it works from the inside out. That is, from inner awareness and intuitiveness, to, say, outward developments such as technological ones. It recognizes, realizes, and possibly manifests that consciousness and spirit existentially trump technology, while allowing both sides their integrities, developments, and due respects. So what might Copernicus say here? As a religiously and occult-minded mathematician and astronomer, he was the person standing at the point around which the two worldviews turned. Why not to just ask what he might have openly spoken over this during his lifetime if he could have survived doing so? There exists a reasonable chance that Copernicus would stand in agreement with us over it, close to 100%. Or would he now suggest a different kind of reconciliation? Maybe a made-up synthesis of sorts that functionally starts on the outside and insinuates its way inwardly. For example, one that points us toward anticipatingly looking to our technological developments to provide for us a fulfilling semblance of inner purpose, maybe even a burst of spiritual light. Steps toward a contraction of consciousness and understanding, really. And toward deeply implanting something artificial into human being, right where the real thing fell into the chasm of a perceived dilemma and has faded from recognition. A genuine consideration for us. It refers to the direction of relevant current events. But remember, we have demonstrated the falsity of the big dilemma. And that Copernicanism overall could have been accepted at the time of Copernicus. That is, barring social and psychological factors that tended to stifle scientific revolutions in general. The dilemma's actual reconciliation not only could have gained acceptance at the time of Copernicus, and still can be now, it also should have been, and still should be. For it runs consistently with the largest body of belief that we had back then, and still have, that itself is coherent. It's a matter of bringing to the light of current awareness what nature put into place upon her first dawn. An afterthought. I do not feel certain over what all lie behind Copernicus' sun worship. Perhaps it included a belief that the sun was the heavenly being upon which our existence depends, the locus of life force itself. In the least, this can roughly be maintained by us today. We have a postmodern, science-based concept of the sun as an electrical event, rather than as a formally postulated nuclear event. And in moderately occult, secretive circles, there has existed long-standing talk of electricity and the vril prana or life force being one and the same thing. Now let's acknowledge that science does have a growing reputation for bringing into its narrow viewfinder states of affairs that had once been occult knowledge only. And let's also acknowledge, as I believe that Copernicus would, that life really is full of natural significance and purpose in their many phases. Copyright by Turk Strongman. YouTube alias Theron Q Ramacharaka. 2022.